when you have homemade bomb shops, you don't necessarily need them, but every single piece of humanitarian aid, every bag of flour arrived in the Gaza Strip, Israel said, just bring it in to the Ashkelon port and we will deliver it. But if you open up that as an open route, we know how much that government invests in its population, how much it invests in weapons. That's the reality. So I think Israel's position was justified, and in fact, when the UN checked it out, they justified the legality of the Israeli siege. And this was a former Prime Minister of New Zealand. It wasn't. So I think that in that sense, we have a responsibility to protect our citizens. I have daughters in the army that are doing it every day, and I'm proud of them because I wish it wasn't that way. But when you come up against recalcitrant regimes that are, you have to respond.
Did they find it? Did they find any weapons?
Well, they did when there was the terrible event with the Turkish. But yeah, they found the handguns and the like. But the fact of the matter is that there are Gaza, despite the siege, is filled with military hardware, which has been smuggled in, mostly via tunnels. If the ocean route would be open, they would have much heavier things coming in. It's a powder keg, the kind of the Grad missiles. It's been smuggled in. Did you have a question, or was it? You have an answer.
And I sort of hear what you're saying, and I hear you're not happy unless Israel has complete control of everything that enters and leaves Palestine. You won't let a ship come in with flour. You're even very unhappy because they wouldn't accept you controlling all their water with your desalinization as you're concerned. You couldn't understand why they wouldn't want that. That gives you complete control over their water, or the Israel. Pardon me, I can see why exactly they wouldn't want it. They want their own water, which Israel, is what I've read, is taking from this aquifer that he was talking about. That is their water. That's the water they should have, not the water from Israel. And I read headlines and not an awful lot of details, but this is the impression I'm getting from it. So I guess I listened to what you had to say.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I just want 2 points of clarification. First of all, my position on the Gaza Strip is very different than on the West Bank. We're dealing with 2 different states here. It makes it complicated. But yes, the blockade, when somebody is at war with me and is regularly shelling my cities, I have a different relationship than I do with a government in the West Bank, which is actively trying to stop that. It's a very different position. Now, with regard to the mountain aquifer, okay, I don't have maps here to start showing you the hydrology, but let's just make the following recognition that the water in the mountain aquifer flows and has flown historically from the West Bank into Israel, where it was tapped, okay? It's the same way that Egypt historically has used the water of the Nile, okay? And if anybody tried to take a drop of that water, Egypt would go to war over it, okay? So, and even so, the entire mountain aquifer in pre-drought areas is 300 million cubic meters. It's not enough for the Palestinians, that's my point. They're going to have to turn to the sea if they're going to have reasonable amounts. And so that's what I'm saying. The mountain aquifer is also, the wellheads, if you were digging the West Bank, it would have to be over a mile deep underground. Now, I understand their position. I'm not dismissing it. I think it's something we can now negotiate and give them those grants because we have the ocean. We have the water that we'd be taking from the sea is much better than the mountain aquifer one, which I believe is going to be ultimately compromised by that. I don't, but I'm saying it has to be part of a bigger regional solution. That's all I'm saying. But I don't feel like I have to control the water resources. I really don't.
Do the Palestinians have access to the ocean? So you couldn't build a desalination plant where it's on their control instead of you controlling it?
I would love.
And the other thing is,
I would love for the Gaza government to build a desalination plant, but they haven't done it.
Well, they can't, obviously. You wouldn't allow the input, the materials in for them to build it. But the other point I would like to make, just as a person who generally watches this thing, when you're saying the Palestinians are throwing rockets at you all the time and this is so bad, the way I hear it is both sides are retaliating. So they aren't just throwing rockets at you. You've done something to them first that caused them to. And then you went in and sent a tank in and killed a bunch of people, then they retaliate. So to me, the only answer in a situation like that is where the most powerful country, or force, whichever it is, has to make the peace initiative and say, this is the way it's we will back out and you can have your land. It can't be the Palestinians. There's no way they can stop Israel from doing what they're doing. It has to be the most powerful country.
I would welcome an international force to sit on the Gaza border and bring in peace. Believe me, I would. I mean, because the present situation isn't good for Israel. I mean, we certainly have, I'd rather be Israeli than Palestinian in the situation, but put it this way, when I was in the army, it would be unimaginable to me that I would have daughters years later who would be having to waste the best years of their life in the army. I'm very unhappy with that situation. I don't think that the people who are in Gaza are going to welcome peacekeeping forces to protect them, because they would have to stop shelling Israel, and that's part of what they do, from what I understand, politically, to maintain their popularity.
And would Israel allow Palestinians to take an army into Israel to keep them from bringing an army over? No. You're saying Israel is a powerful one, and they should be in control, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying, look,
Because the Palestinians will allow people to enter control.
let's get some historical perspective here. Israel occupied the Gaza Strip after 1967. There's a lot of people live in the Gaza Strip, okay? And there were Jewish settlements that were set up there. I think it was a wrong thing to build those settlements, and I'm delighted and proud that the Israeli government realized that they'd made a mistake, and they unilaterally left. They walked away. They left them all the greenhouses and the economic infrastructure, and they walked away, okay? That was the right thing to do, I think, by anybody's perspective. And what happened? A radical Islamic regime took over and began to use Gaza as a base against Israel. That's the historic fact. That's the big picture, okay? Now, the fact that we're powerful than them, I don't have to apologize for that. I think it's a terrible tragedy that was the government that they picked, because if they picked a government that would invest in a desalination plant instead of arms, they would have all the water they could want. The international community was there to provide them with support. But that was not the democratic choice of the Palestinian people. That to me is the facts. I mean, you want to blame Israel for the way that the Palestinians vote, blame us, but that's the government we have.
Folks, I'm sorry to cut this short, it's really getting lively here.
Well, that's good, that's good.
But we do need to break it up, we're supposed to be out by 9 o'clock.
Oh my.
What time is it?
I'm sorry.
10 minutes.
Well, there's several things here, I hope you don't mind. but
Not at all.
I'd like to say one last thing, and that is that in the United States, for some time now, we have been struggling with, especially as Greens, we have been struggling with the increasing kind of rhetoric that pits one group against another and one person against another. And I found that I was noticing within the Greens and within the liberal community generally that we're starting to take sides with Palestine and Israel as if, and it's a very complex situation. And I think that Greens generally need to remember, and most of us do remember most of the time, that we're all people and we're trying to find peaceful solutions, trying to find ways we can live together. And I certainly, forgive me for throwing in my own opinion here, that the population problem is going to exacerbate everything that in regard to people's interpersonal and interpolitical relations. So I really want to thank you very much for coming.
Just one last sentence to end this on a more positive note. I think that the Green Party internationally has something maybe to make a contribution. I think the main point in which I agree with is that left to our own devices, we seem not to be making progress. And I had a dinner, gosh, 6 months ago with Danny, they call him the Red Danny, the head of the European Parliament's Green delegation, Danny Benedict Cohen, who has family in Israel. And I said to him, don't you think you could we could organize a delegation of Green Parliament members to come and meet our colleagues in the West Bank and in Jordan and suggest some regional solutions for these environmental issues to change the spin, bring something, instead of finger pointing and fact finding, let's work together to change the terms of the discussion. And hopefully we're going to be able to find some support from the Heinrich Bell Foundation to make that happen. So I have 2 or 3 friends. We were off in Palestinian friends, and we were off in the Hague together. And I said, why don't you guys create a Green Party in Palestine? There is a democracy there. And they were laughing about it, saying, we should do that. We could probably get a lot of votes, whatever. I would love to see a day when I look across the border and feel I have much more in common with my colleagues in the Green Party in Palestine than I do with some of my colleagues in the Knesset. And I think that the Green vision has the ability to bring that kind of people together.
Yeah, and also then it would not, that there would be another party besides Hamas and Fatah, that they have another choice and maybe they'll grab it.
I hope they grab our choice. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it.